issue of
No, the start the series. There's nothing on the table. Let me just check and see what's working because I'm not seeing anything.
By the time to get back.
I'm just waiting on that.
You need to know.
Yes, great. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to call to order this May 19th meeting of the Education Committee for Council Rock School District. If we could start with some introductions, beginning on my left.
Bob Hickey, School Board. Michael Roosevelt, School Board. Mike Thorwald, School Board. Ed Salomon, School Board.
Matt Fenix, IT Director.
Joe Hidalgo, School Board.
Hannah Preston, Administrator on Special Assignment.
Andy Sanko, Director of K-12 Education.
Kristen Marcel, School Board.
And Mary Ann McKee, School Board. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to, oh, and excuse me, I believe on the phone we may have Mr. Tate. Are you with us, Mr. Tate? And Dr.
I am. Thank you, Mary Ann.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Elliott, are you with us as well?
Yes, I am, Ms. McKee. Thank you.
Thank you both. And welcome to everyone in attendance tonight. We have special guests and members of the public. We thank you for being with us. We have two agenda items tonight. We're going to begin with textbook selection and approval. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Sanko.
Thank you, Ms. McKee. So tonight, for you, we have two agenda items, as Ms. McKee said. We have textbook and resource approvals, and also we want to speak about the elementary enrollment and some problem solving around elementary enrollment. We have a host of our staff here to help us talk through the proposed textbook and resource approvals. And with that, I will hand it to Ms. Pressman.
We're going to begin tonight with our first agenda item of our proposed textbook approvals. We have our curriculum coordinators and our teachers here tonight to talk about our proposed textbooks and resource materials. The first couple slides are just an overview of who is here tonight and the resources and materials that they'll be presenting on. And then they'll speak more specifically about each individual textbook and resource. For math, we have Dr. Julie Eastern. For ELA, we have Ms. Rose Burkhead and Mr. Scott Leventhal, and also Ms. Jessica Baxa. For science, we have Ms. Renee Devlin. Social studies, Mr. Derek Wright. Tech ed, Mr. Kevin Malalu, and world language, Ms. Lynn Young. We're gonna,
Fancy.
We're gonna start with our middle school math.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about our middle school math program in grades 6, 7, and 8. The textbook that I'm asking approval for would be for all 6th grade students and then students in Math 7 and Math 8. And we are putting forward illustrative mathematics. It is a problem-solving based curriculum that has students actively engaged. It has them practicing both content standards and the mathematical practices, which are kind of habits of mind of a mathematician. It will be a change in curriculum. The standards, obviously, the standards will stay the same, but our delivery of standards will be changing as it will be more problem-solving based, more student discourse, students talking back and forth, hashing out ideas. So it will be a change from the teacher-directed instruction that we currently have. It's obviously aligned to our content and PA core standards and the mathematical practices. The nice thing is it has a lot of distributed practice offered throughout the program. And what this distributed practice is it's an opportunity for students to continue to practice a skill repeatedly throughout the year so that it stays in their memory, and it helps, number one, to help students who may struggle with a concept knowing that they'll have exposure to that concept again, and then it also gives students practice with concepts so that hopefully they retain them longer instead of being, teaching fractions and then moving on from a fraction unit. They'll get practice with fractions throughout the year so that they can keep their skills current. It definitely builds computational fluency and procedural fluency. Computation is understanding the concept behind the mathematics, and then procedural is being able to use an efficient strategy to solve a problem. So it gives them practice in both. And one of the amazing things about the program is everything is embedded in a real-life situation so that our students can see why it is they're learning ratio and percents, why they, ratio and proportions, why they're using percents, why percent of change matters, where you see these real-life applications in the real world to hopefully keep our students even more engaged. So you'll see that I'm asking to purchase 6th, 7th, and 8th grade textbooks for students. They are consumable textbooks, so we can choose in the following years to purchase them again, or we can just download them offline. We will also be getting teacher materials, including all the manipulatives, consumable manipulatives and non-consumable manipulatives, so the teachers have all the resources that they need to make this a hands-on, engaged problem-solving curriculum. The nice thing about this program is that the online resources themselves, the actual resources for the teachers, are free, and they're specifically made, designed that way so that students that money isn't an obstacle to providing a standards-based, research-based program that's good for kids. So you can see the prices up there. And this does come with staff development. We have 3 days of staff development as part of this purchase, which will there will be a date. Teachers have a choice of 2 dates over the summer that they can come in for day 1 of training, and then on August 24th, one of the opening day in service, teachers will have day 2 of the training, and then the 3rd day will be on election day. And that's for the training that we actually pay for, and then most of our teachers will also be participating on the February in service. I'll get the date off the top of my head to continue that, because it really is a shift in the way we're offering instruction. So it's really important that we give teachers the training that they need to make it successful. So, any questions that I can answer?
Mr. Salmon?
Consumables you mentioned are included in this, so unlike bridges, there's no additional cost to this program moving forward, correct?
Correct. Correct. And by consumables mean consumables as in the actual workbooks, or consumables as in the
Additional items
manipulatives.
to produce this. Yeah.
There'll be nothing else this year that we need to purchase. If we decide the following year that we want to purchase the student book, but no, we won't have that issue.
So I've done some reading on illustrated mathematics. It's also available from K to 12.
Correct.
Is there a reason why we're not adopting this at the elementary level to be consistent, or am I overthinking it?
No, I would say,
So I understand, we have a K to 6 or a K to 5 program now that's bridges. We have now a new program, 6, 7, and 8.
correct.
Illustrated mathematics, of which is available in K.
It is, and
What was
we
the
looked at
mindset?
it, we did, illustrative math was, believe it or not, it's pronounced illustrative, I think I said
That's my
illustrative
mistake.
also. No, it's in mine too, someone just corrected me on it just in the last couple months. So when we were looking at our elementary math program, they didn't really have everything up and running, and it didn't feel like a complete program. It didn't look like a complete program at the time, which is why we went with Bridges. But it has the same problem-solving based instructional model, that the transition from Bridges into illustrative math will not be challenging for students at all, because it'll be the same kind of teaching model that they're used to. And we frequently have different publishers of textbooks depending on courses.
But does it make sense to consider this K through 9?
At this point, I don't think so, because I think Bridges is working for us, and teachers spent a lot of time getting to know Bridges and learning how to effectively implement it, that if we changed it up on them.
And just out of curiosity, the K to 6 or the K to 5 program that this program offers, how many minutes is it for the elementary level?
Oh, that I don't know. I'll be honest with you, it's probably 60. Most programs are 60, but I don't honestly know.
Thank you.
Yep,
Appreciate it.
and it is recommended 45 to 60 minutes for 6, 7, and 8. So it does fit within the timeframes of our middle school and elementary. Yes.
Hello. How many other programs, since you mentioned that this is a change, how many other programs or resources or competitors were compared when selecting illustrative mathematics?
That's a great question. Selecting a textbook is a very overwhelming process. So we started out with looking at what, I went online and looked at what programs were available from both the big publishers and then from smaller publishers. Because this actually is a smaller publisher that they then, we get it through Kendall Hunt to buy our textbooks, but it's actually, the program itself is free. So I sift through a lot, looked on ed reports to find out which programs actually have research that show that they actually have improved math achievement. And then we had, I want to say 6 or 7 publishers come in and show us their materials. And then from there, we had a committee of all 7th and 8th grade teachers, and then 1 to 2 teachers per elementary building looking at them. So then as a committee, we spent quite a few days in service days, and then 1 half day where I pulled teachers from the classroom, going through, looking at the materials, looking at the standards, deciding which programs, even though they were all research-based, which programs we thought would work best with our students.
I've got a couple of follow-up questions.
Okay.
So in that evaluation, since we're not changing the K through 6 or K through 5, do you find, and did your committee find, that these dovetail well so that 5 to 6 is a smooth transition?
Yes. We actually had 6th grade teachers on the committee, and then we had the elementary math specialist also on the committee. And there were some of the 6th grade teachers that were on the committee were actually previous K to 5 teachers, so they were able to offer their opinion on that also to make sure that they felt that the transition would be smooth for students.
Okay, because after like a quick preview and flip through this, I appreciate the relating to why you're doing percentages and such that you said.
Yes.
But it also seems a bit wordy and to sort of get into the instruction of it. So that's kind of why I was curious, are all of them kind of going in that direction, the 6 to the 7 that you looked at? Or
It is, because if you think about the skills that a mathematician needs, they need to be able to think critically, to look at information and tease out what math they actually need. Like, we don't need them to just be computers anymore, you know,
Right.
the student themselves to do computation. We actually need them to think and analyze, and when that happens, it has to be more wordy. But the nice thing is that part of this program has routines that we actually teach students. One of which is, think, pair, share, where they think on their own, then they pair with a partner, and then they share with a larger group. And there's also a daily routine. One of the routines that we teach is students' ability to read math problems, because the skills you need to read a math problem are very different than the skills that Ms. Burkhead needs for literacy. That yes, we need to read to be able to figure out what the words are, but you actually, to decode a math problem is very different than decoding a paragraph.
Right.
So that specifically teaches it, which is one of the reasons why we like this, because it actually is teaching those skills to students.
Okay. My last question is, you mentioned that this is a new program. It differs from the previous program. Can you expand on like the how and the why it's different?
Sure.
I believe you alluded in an earlier question that the hope is to improve the instructional results that
Right.
the kids get from it. But I just want to hear it.
Right. So our Blanco program that we currently have is the premise of it is that it's teacher-led, and the teacher goes up and does the traditional classroom that you and I probably had, where the teacher does a couple examples, and then you do those examples. And we call it the I do, we do, you do model. I do a problem, you do a couple together, then you do it on your own. And research really says that for a lot of kids that doesn't work. That we actually need kids to think more and kind of come up with processes themselves, because there isn't always one way to add a group of numbers. Like I'll go back to an elementary example. There's always, if you're adding a bunch of numbers, you may add them one way, I add them another. I may group them one way because I group my tens together, and you may, be better at holding that mental map in your head. So this allows students to use and find those ways that work best and efficiently for them. And it also is going to make the math classroom more student interactive, because the routines, again, are set up that it is an expectation that students will talk with each other, hash their ideas out with each other, which the current program that we have, although it addresses the same standards, doesn't promote that kind of thinking.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes,
For
Dr.
your
Foreman?
Bible, one was, I have two questions. One was probably yes or no. Was this piloted anywhere?
It was not. We did not have time this year. It was a burden that I didn't feel I could put on teachers. But we did talk to. I set up with some districts that are currently using the program through a math consortium that I'm in, and we did set up some meetings with classroom teachers that were actually implementing it, and it actually came down to two different programs, and it was through the conversations that they had with other teachers that they chose illustrative math over. We had Carnegie Math was one of our finalists.
And then my next question, it was at one time a superintendent objective, and I'm looking down here, it's going to be again, math acceleration, algebra in 6th grade. Is this going to impede or help with that?
Well, algebra in 6th
Math
grade.
acceleration.
I think. Well, we Dr. Elaine and I put together we did it like a math review, and we do. It is not going to impede it. I can give you a short answer or a long answer. Which would you?
Well, I guess the only answer I need is what's impeding. If this is not.
It is not going to impede that process at all. No.
Okay.
No. In fact, I would argue that it's probably going to help us get more students into honors levels classes, because those are the only two choices at the middle school, because we're going to be giving them more of a conceptual understanding, and when students understand something, they're able to retain it. When we give them a list of steps to follow, they can choose the steps and they can't follow it. So
Yeah, I meant, and we don't have to get into that. I meant, could we be teaching algebra in 6th grade in the elementary school with this program?
this wouldn't impede that from happening now.
Yes,
One
Mr.
more question, I'm
Hidalgo?
sorry, mine's more of a dollar and cents, and I brought this up last time. Every time I look at the books and I look at the shipping costs, I'm just saying to myself, with 11,000, it's 1,800 units, and I'm just wondering, like, how many books come in a box? I'm guessing it's 20 or something along those lines.
Oh, the shipping box?
I mean, do they come in a box? They're not being individually shipped for $6. So
No,
what I'm saying.
typically they, I mean, I can only speak from the current book that we have. Typically they came about 20 in a box.
10 or 20. So yeah, so if you think about it, it's $150 shipping per box, which might be fine by weight. I'm probably off base, but I
And
always
there's
wanted
two
to take a
volumes.
look at it.
There are 2 volumes, so every 6th grade student, there'll be a volume 1 and a volume 2, and the teachers usually hold on to volume 1 or volume 2 while they're teaching from volume 1. So
So
it's kind of double the books.
If it's 1,800 or whatever, 1,820, it's actually double that for the number of books, actually?
The actual textbook, yes, because
Yeah.
they don't want to have a big fat.
Excellent. Okay, well, then I said it makes sense, but I'm always thinking that when you have bulk, when you buy in bulk, they should be giving you a deal on
I did,
shipping.
I
We
called,
really got to keep.
I did.
And then if there's 2 comparable programs, then maybe that's something where you say, hey, even if it's just haggling a little bit, it's worth trying to save on that end, in my opinion. Because a lot of things are free shipping, other
Right.
things aren't. So when you're spending $111 or $115,000 to get a break on the shipping would be pretty. Yeah, anyway, that's not just for you, that's for everybody, but that's something I still struggle with, and just, when do I have time to do that?
I can only speak for the phone calls I made. They basically said, that's our shipping, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Because we gave you the quote today, yesterday, the price was actually went up
good save.
today, so you get yesterday's price.
Yeah, no worries, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Dr. Eastburn? No? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move forward to ELA.
Should be free.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for providing us the opportunity to present some books and digital resources that we feel will benefit our Council Rock students. Our first two selections are 7th grade English novels, and they could be used in resource academic or honors courses. First, the book Restart by Gordon Foreman. Foreman is known for his humor. He's written over 90 books for children and young adults. And this story, Restart, I feel that he masterfully weaves the topic of bullying and the power of forgiveness. It's told through multiple perspectives, which allows the reader to experience the story through multiple characters' eyes. The main character, Chase Ambrose, falls off the roof at the beginning of the story, and he suffers from amnesia. He completely forgets about his previous life as a bully and a jock. When he returns to school, he's met with a wide variety of reactions from his peers. He has a unique opportunity to restart his life. The 7th graders who have piloted this book report that it is an approachable and engaging novel. Many students are able to relate to Chase's health crisis, amnesia, because it reminds them of health issues that they have encountered, like concussions. They love how the main character learns to be a better person. In fact, there are positive outcomes for all of the characters in this novel, and the students learn some great lessons about how to deal with bullying, the detriment of retaliation, and how to make friends in other friend groups. This is so relatable for our 7th grade population because they too are starting middle school and trying to learn more about themselves. Our next novel is one that's been very popular as a lit circle, The Giver by Lois Lowry. Again, we are looking just to move this from lit circles to whole group instruction. This was published in 1994. It's a dystopian science fiction novel. It's a Newbery Award-winning book. This novel allows students to gain a greater perspective of society and to think outside the box. The book would give students a look into the world that is very different than our own world. And they will have the opportunity to explore why memories are so important in society. It's a great study in figurative language and motifs, as it develops colors and emotions throughout. At the beginning of the novel, everything is black and white, and over time, colors are added. This well-loved book will be an incredible addition to our cult class novels. Next up is high school novels. So in 10th grade, 10th and 12th grade, all across high school, we're trying to expand our modern, diverse voices. And I did bring with me Mr. Leventhal and Mrs. Basta for any questions. They have both taught some of these books and the digital resource mapping. So when you have questions, we can rely on their expertise. In 10th grade, we're looking to add The Other Wes Moore, One Name, Two Fates by Wes Moore. It was piloted in reading, writing workshop and academic, but could easily be used in accelerated and honors levels. A main theme for this 10th grade course is coming of age. Currently, we teach The Catcher in the Rye. The Other Wes Moore provides a modern look at this topic and incorporates racial, economic, social diversity into the curriculum. Wes Moore sets out to answer the question of how two boys with the same name, race, family, and cultural backgrounds find themselves on two completely different life journeys. The author, Wes Moore, becomes a Rhodes Scholar, Army officer, served as a White House Fellow, and currently works for a nonprofit organization. The other, Wes Moore, is serving a life sentence in prison. This novel is a biography and an autobiography, and uses a narrative style to explore and question how decisions influence life. The stories of both West Moors resonate with our 10th grade students because the stories are about embracing support and relying on experience as a huge factor in learning and moving forward in a productive way. Students have multiple opportunities to write in response to this text, evaluating the decisions each West makes, ultimately making connections to their own lives and the lessons they can use to ensure they are becoming the best versions of themselves. Our last novel we would like to bring forward for approval is In the Time of Butterflies for our 12th grade English course. 12th grade English curriculum focuses on international literature as opposed to the American literature that is largely the focus of 9th, 10th, and 11th grade curriculum. Additionally, examining the archetypes such as the hero's journey is an integral part of the curriculum for this grade level. Currently, we do not have many texts that were written after the 60s in our 12th grade curriculum, and even fewer written by a female author. Julia Alvarez's historical fiction novel, In the Time of the Butterflies, captures the heroic efforts of the Mirabal sisters, who were resilient and determined to fight back against tyranny in the Dominican Republic. This novel allows each of the 4 sisters' stories to unfold over time. And these sisters are known as national heroes in the Dominican Republic. In fact, their story is the inspiration for the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. This work of literature will incorporate the focus and concepts of our 12th grade curriculum in a contemporary, relatable voice that will engage our students. Additionally, it will expand their literary horizons as readers and world citizens. This novel is on the National Endowment for the Arts Big Read list, and author Julia Alvarez received the National Medal for the Arts for her work as a novelist, poet, and essayist. Next up is our vocabulary program, MEMBEAM. Vocabulary instruction has always been a core component in our English curriculum. The high school has used Sadler or Oxford vocabulary workshops for vocabulary instruction. During the pandemic, we learned many different ways to utilize technology to personalize learning. We discovered MEMBEAM. MEMBEAM's goal is not to teach words, but rather to build word consciousness through an empowerment loop. According to MEMBEAM, the empowerment loop is when you genuinely know some words and are curious about words, and then you notice other words in your reading, and that leads to better words showing up in your writing. And that continues in a loop. In order for students to truly master vocabulary words, they must practice words multiple times and apply them in a variety of settings. In our traditional approach to vocabulary, students learn 20 words, their definitions, synonyms, antonyms. Students were assessed on 20 words and moved on to the next unit. MEMBEAM follows a different approach. First, students listen to how the word is pronounced. Next, they're asked to make an inference about the word by reading a paragraph where the word is used multiple times in context. Third, students are asked to follow up with a multiple choice question about a new word. Once the student answers the question, a student-friendly definition is shared. Students are then given multiple opportunities to look at the words. They can look at prefixes, suffixes, Greek and Latin roots. A word map is created to allow the brain to categorize and relate words to other known words. Multiple authentic examples are shared with students. Once a word is introduced, students receive numerous opportunities to train with the word on MEMBEAM. MEMBEAM tracks data on how students retain each word that is introduced to them. Traditionally, students learn vocabulary words with a test. Then, they were not assessed on words for an extended period of time. Through MEMBEAM, student data is tracked regularly to collect how well students are recalling a word. That data is immediately used to ensure students are getting enough training for each word. After sustained training with a word, retention increases significantly. The ideal expectations for using MEMBEAM in high school is to allow about 45 minutes a week. About 80% of the training time each week is dedicated to review. The training should be spread over 2 to 4 days, and students should have a choice in when to train. At some levels, this may be a homework assignment. At other levels, it may be completed during class time. Grading for MEMBing training is encouraged, and the teachers can penalize for dubious minutes. If students have dubious minutes in a training week, they are allowed to make up that time. Students take assessments in MEMBing when they are ready. Due to the training, students should not need extra time to study for the assessments. If you're a numbers person, I just have a couple stats here. We have 210 students using MEMBing in Council Rock this year. 1,509 total hours of training have been done by our students. The average words per student is 172 words. 22,380 questions have been answered this year, which is almost 1,100 questions per student. Traditionally, our students would have answered 900 for the entire school year with Sadlier. The average accuracy rate on the training questions is 76%, and the average assessment score based on usage is 90%. I thought it was also important to share some feedback from students on the program. Direct quotes. It feels like I'm studying rather than being given words. I feel like I can move at my own pace. It's more interactive. I like that there's so many ways to interact with words. One kid even called it fun. And today, while conversing with a colleague who teaches seniors, she shared how impressed she was that every student in her class scored above an 85% on the last assessment. This does not happen in MED with seniors. Our English teachers are charged with teaching reading and analysis of fiction and nonfiction, writing, grammar, speaking, listening. In addition, vocabulary development. This program gives students autonomy with vocabulary practice and allows teachers more time to plan and develop impactful lessons that engage our students. We have spoken at length about learning loss through the pandemic, and this program is a data-driven solution that will help our students learn vocabulary at their own pace and retain that vocabulary, which will enable them to be stronger readers, writers, speakers, and listeners. That's all I have.
That's great. Any questions? Yes, Dr. Thornton?
I'll start since you got this up. I actually am a parent who's experiencing this, and I'll be asking for this to be moved for a vote. I reached out to our Director of Curriculum Instruction with serious questions about this early on, basically about how you quiz and grade on it, because I'm hearing from my student, it's not uniform or fair. And what I'm seeing is the brighter kids have figured out how to game it to make it more fair, because it's not uniform or fair. At any given week, and tell me if I'm wrong, certain students could have a lot more words on a quiz than other students, but the grade is the same, correct, in a classroom?
I can answer. We're focused on usage for the vocabulary, and while kids will work at a different pace based on how they move through it, even the kids who are moving through the slowest version of the program, who may be gaming the system, are actually moving at a faster pace than they are with Sadlier, and they're genuinely engaging with the words. When we talk about equity in gaming the system, it's not gaming the system when a kid walks into a classroom and knows 50, 70, 80% of the words that they're expected to learn throughout the course of the year. And then at the same time, you have kids who come in who don't know any of those words. So you've got kids, the playing field ends up level where everybody's expected to know the same words, but the kids who start at a higher level are not being challenged traditionally, and the kids who start at a lower level are expected to do a whole lot more work to engage with those words. So the kids who are genuinely engaged and moving at the pace that they're 100% capable of, the numbers are through the roof. We have kids who, we started this program in the beginning of the second marking period, and they've engaged with over 550 words in the course of that time, where they would have only seen 150 words in Sadlier, and those words are consistently drilled for them. So when they review, they're eliminating, as Ms. Burkett mentioned, the forgetting curve, which is very common. So in our traditional programs, kids only see words a handful of times they may be presented in the classroom, and then they have a couple of exercises, and then their quiz. In MEMB, they're consistently re-exposed to those words to ensure that they know them, and the kids who are really enjoying it and engaged, the ones that you quoted, are kids who are, they're clicking on those words, and as soon as they see it, they know it, and they're able to move on and see a whole lot more work. So the kids who want to be more challenged are challenged to an infinite level, and the kids who don't want to be more challenged are still exposed to more vocabulary words and are learning them more consistently and effectively than they would in our traditional vocab instruction.
And I understand that, it's AI driven, I've spent a lot of time with the package. My issue is not one of how effective it is, my issue is one of there's no level playing field in the grading for this, because it's not level. Those who are exceeding are consistently graded at a level that's higher than those who are not. But then in the end, an A is an A and honor is English. It doesn't matter. So my take and my problem with this is I'm a big fan of differentiation. If you reward kids who are pushing themselves, in this case, it doesn't feel like you're rewarding those kids. You're punishing those kids in my mind. And that's the problem for me. I think the program itself has very good merit, but I'm struggling with, it seems to be enforcing mediocrity, because if you're in the middle, that's where you need to be in terms of level of effort for the class. And there's no reward for, you know, if you told some of these kids, when we hit 900, everything's a bonus after that, watch what happens. But that's not happening in this classroom. And you haven't heard from me because I'm a school director. I try and stay out of the classroom as much as I can. He really likes the class, and really, you know. So, but I am seriously and trying to rationally, you know, tell you I struggle with differentiation when it becomes a punishment, and that's what I feel I'm experiencing here with this. So,
and I would say that the perception of punishment for the kids who are moving much more quickly and exposed to more words, because of the nature of the program, they continue to score high on their assessments, and the kids who are trying to meter their pace so that they don't have to worry about as many words are, again, still exposed to more words than they would have been through the traditional program. And yeah, their grades may be artificially inflated because they're slowing themselves down, but I would argue that we should be valuing the opportunity for learning as opposed to the grade itself, and the kids being engaged in the work, the training, as Nandine calls it, is a portion of their grade, so that they're doing the training, and then the assessments themselves is that other reward, but overall, the averages are high. And at an honors level, I think it'll be very interesting when we move from pilot to actual use of the program, and we get kids who are in 9th grade taking that initial assessment and then moving through those programs. I suspect that there will be some level of competition between the students as far as what level they're on, how many words they have seen, especially as they move up, and then they're seeing the program for the second, third, and even fourth year as they get to their senior year.
and again, I'm sorry to monopolize, but it's very rare to get a parent in the room who's experienced a pilot, and you know, and I don't want to try and sound, you know, I'm really struggling with being able to vote for this one. So, and I'm going to ask that it be pulled from the consent agenda for a vote, because I'd like to see it piloted again with incentives for overperforming or outperforming. And again, just me. I think we need to reward excellence, not, and again, just me. So, that's where I'm.
I think it's important to recognize, like you said, see it piloted again. This is the first year that teachers are using it. It was given to us by MEMB for free, so we haven't yet had the training. We will have training and look at those different ways to implement it, and especially at the half price discount. I think getting all the students on board and seeing how the program can actually work at large would be a great opportunity to see. how those things actually play out and would save kids from the monotony of traditional vocabulary instruction, which is rough.
Yeah, yes. So, okay, I mean.
And I would say, I spoke with our rep and really tried to get a good price on this, and we're coming in lower than what sadly it would cost. So, and the other point I think that's important, the average score on assessments is 90%. So students are being rewarded for their work. They're working, they're training, and they're receiving that credit. Now, I realize some kids are getting more words, but they're still committing the same amount of time. But we all move at different paces, and what's fair is not always equal. So I think that's just an important point to think about as we look at this program.
Do you know what's the effect of this program on the SAT scores? Because vocabulary is a big part of it, and if they're so much better with that, then it will see the effect of their SAT scores.
Yeah, I would guess that this SAT scores would be better with this program. I don't have any data to support that right now, but I can look.
And Sadly, there was an SAT, or is an SAT geared vocabulary program, and the SAT no longer has vocab sections, where it used to be, do you know these arcane words or these niche words that kids genuinely only know for the SAT, and now the SAT tests the words in context to understand author purpose, and that's exactly what this does, where Sadly teaches them definitions, and we hear kids mispronounce words or misuse words consistently, even after modeling for them in the classroom. The kids who use Membean are not tested on, do you know the definition? Do you understand which context would be the correct context for this word, so that it's constantly challenging them to understand the word usage, which is what the SAT tests.
So do you know if the program developer has data like that to show have they done an assessment? I mean, not that counts a lot because it's a pilot, but if they look like for people who've used it consistently, if they have like SAT score.
I don't think the SAT, like vocab used to be a whole part of it. Vocabulary in the SAT now is a much smaller section, and it's more focused on writing and author purpose and the structure of argument and those types of things. So I'm sure there is data, but it's a much smaller piece of the pie than it used to be.
Anything else? Yes.
I'll just follow up. As a teacher, are you able to separate the scores of Membean from the grade in the class? Or are they too connected, to Mr. Forward's point?
And I'm having trouble understanding what's separated.
Just how do the grades factor into their overall score?
Correct.
So we typically have vocab worth percentage of the grade mark grade. With the pilot, we went with 10%, and that's based on the acceptance. And they take the assessments when they're ready, like Mr. Burkhardt said. And it's true that they might be tested on a different number of words, but it's based on what they've shown success with and what they've been able to master. So different kids will take an assessment. It's more like the assessment is given on this day, we're getting an assessment. It's going to be based on the words you have mastered. Mastered is the word that they use. So this student might be taking a test on these words and might be a smaller list, while as this student has these words. It's based on what they've been doing.
Right. So as a teacher for this, are you able to separate that from the grade in the class, such that a kid that is mastering more words than another kid is given a better grade? And that, to Mr. Forward's point, there is an incentive on excellence. Or are you not able to do that with this program?
Membean recommends that the kids train for 45 minutes per week, and that's the pacing that will eliminate that forgetting curve. Kids can certainly train more if they choose to, but pushing them to learn more words would eliminate part of the advantage of the program, which is that re-exposure. It's something we could certainly do. We can see how many words kids engage with during the course of the week. And as I said, next year when we're piloting, that's something that we could certainly consider as a part of how we assess or how we expect kids to train with a minimum number. That's not something we've done this year, but the data is readily available in the.
So, yes.
Yeah.
Other questions? Comments? No. So Dr. Thurwood, I have a note that this should be pulled from consent agenda. Anything else on language arts?
I have other questions on other.
I
Oh,
started
excuse me.
because I knew this was open. I'll stop.
Yes.
So in regards to the novels, can you expand on how your selection process was conducted? And do you have, just off the top of your head, I'm not asking you to memorize, but do you have a list of maybe other books that you considered? And I'm interested to know that and how you selected these from them.
So I guess the process really begins with when we look at our curriculum and we see a need for something new to come up. So in the case of In the Time of the Butterflies, everything in the course is written before 1960, and there's no female authors. So let's find something that actually can be more modern and diverse. And that was an initiative that was set forth right before the pandemic. We started to explore more modern, diverse novels that our kids could engage with. So I think the selection process begins with, where's the need? When our kids experience a novel or something that we do in class, are they relating to it? Are they engaged? And how can we make it better? So it always starts with that. How are we making this a better experience for our students? And then when we go to find novels, we're relying on what other districts are doing, what other teachers have found in their research, and then we bring it forth. I know Ms. Bostock has taught In the Time of the Butterfly, and it started in summer reading.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about novels that we're going to bring into the curriculum, that we want to hit a couple of things, like increasing diversity and bringing in a different voice, especially with something that's more contemporary. The challenge is finding something that's going to be age appropriate, that's going to expose kids to things that are not going to be, traumatizing, and there's a language concern, and there's, different scenes that might be concerning. And with contemporary novels, really the sky's the limit. So I feel like In the Time of the Butterflies hits a couple of the boxes we've been talking about without having any, in my opinion, extremely controversial material in terms of language and explicit content. So here we're getting something that has independent voices, these 4 women that are the heroines of the story. We're hearing about life in the Dominican Republic, and we're not getting a lot of the 4-letter language and drug use, things like that, which I'm reading a lot in the contemporary novels that are coming out. This particular novel also offers a lot in terms of the narrative structure. Rose mentioned the archetypes that are present in the book. It has a lot of literary merit in addition to adding to the curriculum what we've been working for without, in my mind, putting up something that could be problematic with explicit content.
Just a quick question, since you have this screen up about this particular novel. This is going to replace The Catcher in the Rye?
No. So The Catcher in the Rye we brought up because it is similar to The Other Westmore. So The Other Westmore and The Catcher in the Rye are both at the 10th grade level, and they both have coming of age ideas to them. So in the Time of the Butterfly, it doesn't necessarily replace anything in particular.
Okay, and then the other question is, I didn't understand the 2 bullets, because bullet number 2 says it's a historical fiction, but then bullet number 3 says it's real life heroines.
So she takes the story of the 4 women, all of the facts, and it's basically filling in what she thinks the conversations would have been like, what the experience would have been like. So you can imagine we don't have word-for-word conversation accounts of what they experienced. So it's filling it in imaginatively, but the basic facts of the story are represented.
Thanks.
Mr. Hidalgo.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate bringing the literature forward, and I think one important thing is at back to school night, parents have an opportunity to weigh in or see what books they have, which I think is a great process. I see when we're looking and reviewing, you mentioned explicit content and language, drug uses are all things you're screening for. In the level, obviously, grade level matters. So I see that we have like a bias and discrimination evaluation, which is great, but I just don't see, is there something explicitly written for other content, like you mentioned, you screen for these things, but is that a checklist of part of the written evaluation process?
Honestly, if I'm looking at and, reading through novels that I'm considering that I would bring up to the board, if there was something that had that kind of explicit content, I would not consider it.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's not, it wouldn't be on the list, like saying, hey, does it contain explicit content, yes or no, and then be
Like,
able
do
to
I have a
action it.
list of explicit things? And
No, well, yeah, you would, it's somewhat subjective too, and
Yeah,
age-based and all the
absolutely.
rest of it, but I prefer not to have those types
to
of
be
things.
that,
I wouldn't want to vote yes for something for it that had explicit content. I mean, language is actually relative to the age, but explicit, something that I think is, would be inappropriate in a public school. So I don't know if that's something we can document and track so that people on the board know that what we're getting is nothing that you could say would be considered explicit.
Okay, so like highlighted.
Oh, just
scene,
another checkpoint, like,
things like
but
that.
yeah, so, but thank you, just wanted to put that out there. Is that possible? Who makes up the checklist? I guess that's the administration and the curricular coordinators come up with the checklist. I would ask, just so I can say, okay, that's checked off the list and we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Zelman?
It's just a financial question. Who do we go through for these books? Because I can get that same thing on Amazon right now for $1,500.
So we go through Permabound.
Have we looked elsewhere? We're in the middle of a budget right now where every dime counts. And I can get the same shipment for $1,500 right now from Amazon.
Do they have the hardcover?
It's paperback.
Okay, so paperback books, we would need to replace more often. These all are, it's called Permabound, so it has almost a more solid cover. And that way we can use them for years rather than when you buy a paperback book, it's destroyed usually within the school year. So we would have to be replacing these books more frequently.
Well, we do shop the costs. Right?
Yes. And like the Giver, the one that you're holding, we got them through Scholastic, and I think there's probably 100 already at the middle level. Paperback books, they're destroyed. Because the minute it goes into a backpack, it goes home, you use it in your class, and then it moves on to the second teacher that uses it.
Yeah, I hear it. It's
It's,
$100,000 in Chromebook repairs this year.
Yes, I mean, it just.
Can I follow up on that? Do we try using any of the group purchasing organizations that we're now affiliated with? Maybe, I know you guys have, there's companies that are just really a niche for educational books. But I think that there's group purchasing organizations, and I wonder if they dabble in this, because I know one of them, Omnia, I think, and I don't know if it's happening, but there might be a time when Omnia, that we use as a partner, will be doing Amazon business and getting group purchasing prices. So if that's not looked at, I'd like somebody to look at that too, please. I mean, yeah, you got to talk with maybe the business director to see it. Thank you.
Mr. Roosevelt?
I just wanted to follow up, because I didn't get an answer for my first question. How many other novels were considered when you came up with these? Do you have like
I
thought?
just generally, I wouldn't say that we have a list. English teachers are always reading, and we're sharing novels with each other and talking about possibilities. So I would suggest that we probably have 5 or 6 novels that when we're talking about what might be brought into the curriculum, we're sharing texts with each other and saying, what do we think of this one or that one? We haven't formalized the process, but there's definitely a group of books that we're consistently sharing.
Could you rattle off a couple titles or authors or something, just for understanding of what else you were considering?
So
I can produce one for you by tomorrow. I just have to, I mean, honestly, more books get denied by me than get considered, you know what I mean? So I read something and I like it, but I find it's not appropriate for this reason. So, but I could definitely do that.
Okay, see, that would just be helpful, just to understand where the selection is. And as far as paperbacks not surviving, I still have my middle school paperback version of The Catcher in the Rye that survived at least 5 moves. It's completely intact. I've read all the pages. I underlined things. We sourced all of that. maybe I take better care for things, but I just wanted to throw that in there.
That's awesome, it's a treasure.
I have others as well, but you know, relevant. Thank you.
Dr.
Ms.
Foreman?
McKee?
Yes, Mr. Tate?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to throw in real quickly. Number one, I heard a really long, in-depth interview with the woman who wrote Time of the Butterflies, and I think that's a marvelous choice. And number two, the vocabulary program sounds terrific. As an English major, I always loved words, and that sounds like a really fun device. And the fact that it yields that kind of data, I think is tremendous. And finally, I would say that simply the fact that we choose curriculum and books as a committee with a committee approach, gives me a lot of confidence that the selections are well thought out and they're in the best interest of students. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. And yes, Dr. Thorwart.
Will every 12th grader have a reading next year?
No, it's just a selection on the list. It's not a core instruction. There's a whole bunch of books that can be chosen.
Well, by the student.
By the teacher.
Oh, okay, so in theory, every 12th grader could be made.
If every teacher decided that they were going to take it up and sure, but I don't see that happening.
And we would need to purchase a whole lot more if every single student was going to read it.
Trying to figure out what I have to read this summer, that's why I'm asking this question. Because
Add it to your list, it's very good.
my kids aren't reading it until I read it. That's
Could we add to the list of the other options that teachers can select from if they're not all doing this, in addition to the list that you indicated you could provide of other considerations for these spots?
In the course overviews, we have generally a selection of, we're going to teach this classic or these classics, and then choose from the selection. We can certainly produce that.
That'd be great, thank you.
Good. Anything else? Okay, seeing nothing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have science.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello, Renee.
I'm excited to share 7 new kits that come with a textbook for elementary. Okay, I think we're doing 2nd to 5th grade, and then 1 high school book. So a lot of the commonality between each kid you'll see on each side, so I don't mean to be redundant. So I can also give an overview at the end of the elementary section before we head on to the 1 high school book. So the first book or kit that I present to you is for 2nd grade, and how can we find the best place for a plant to grow? Right now, we teach plants in 3rd grade. And next generation science standards are on the docket to be approved for Pennsylvania in July. Our state standards are from 2002. So our plant kit that Ms. Pressman taught my twins in Holland when they were in 3rd grade is from 2002. Next generation science standards prefers it in 2nd grade. So it's not 100% new to our curriculum, it's just a shift to a different grade level. Next generation science standards also is a phenomena approach. Instead of giving content and saying, these are the parts of the plant, here's the vocab, it's more question-based. And there are STEM challenges throughout each instead of at the end when most teachers don't always get to that part. So we had science leaders in the district look at the kit. We started with 3rd grade to see what they thought, if it should stay in 3rd, because that would have, even though Next Gen says it belongs in 2nd, we thought let's show the 3rd grade teachers. And the readability is better in 2nd grade. Sometimes the readability comes in a little high because of a lot of similar work in science. So then it was piloted at Holland Elementary this year. It also prepares students for the 4th grade PSSA. So there is a science challenge, so I'll just go through a couple things in this kit. So it goes over what do plants need to grow, what is their structure and function. Right now we have plants and insects as 2 separate units. With the minutes changing, this will actually be helpful for us because we will not have a standalone insect unit.
it talks about pollination right in the plant kit, and then the culminating challenge is talking about giving kids data and analyzing the decline of the bee population. It comes with online access, which our current kit from 2002. None of our kits I'm presenting today have online access. None of them have ebooks. None of them have auditory, and none of them have teacher PowerPoint or Google slide presentations or enrichment. So this is a big step up from 2 decades ago. So that's our first. Thank you. Okay. And the second one for second grade, this actually is recommended from Next Gen to stay in second grade. This is a new addition to what we currently already have. So we started piloting it during the pandemic. So this is a 2-year pilot. It was piloted by Richborough Elementary. Carla Floyd was the leader on that, Maureen Welch, so Finestone, and Goodnow. So this is our current kit, but from 2002. So many of your kids might have already done this in second grade, but again, this just is with all the bells and whistles. The kits from 2002, unfortunately, are being discontinued. We can't refill them anymore. So it comes with good timing with Next Gen on the docket and updating our kids at the same time. So again, this is also on the PSSA for 4th grade. 3rd grade, we piloted how do weather and climate affect our lives. This is a new topic for 3rd grade, and it is Next Gen aligned. So since we're taking plants out of 3rd grade and moving it to 2nd, we're introducing a topic that we need in 3rd grade to be aligned for our standards. Interestingly enough, when I reached out to teachers who wanted to pilot, and we know everyone's overextended with what they're doing, I have 6 schools piloting this. They wanted to pilot it because their materials and stuff is so old. So Rolling Hills, Churchville, Newtown, Maureen Welch, and Goodnow all piloted this kit, and they absolutely love it. The kids are engaged. They have rain gauges that come with the kit. There's extensions. They have to do a design challenge. What's the best thing to design a roof that will withstand different types of weather? Okay, moving on to 4th grade. This is a kit we already do. It's just the new addition. We do an animal studies unit now, but now it's aligned to Next Gen. So this isn't going to be a major shift for 4th grade. Instead of getting maybe 4 live organisms, they might get 3. So we will have a little bit more streamlined time. Again, there's online, there's ebooks, there's differentiated readers. A teacher could ask for a set above level, on level, and below level when we order the readers, which was not available in 2002 for us. Plus, they can do it online and have that audio component, like I said. So this is just a kit we have, just the new addition. Moving on to 5th grade, Next Gen recommends how to navigate the night sky. They spiral the topics in elementary from earth science, physical science, chemical science, and life science with the engineering component. So as we pick our kids, we want to make sure they're aligned, and going through elementary, they get a little bit of each discipline along the way, and it builds. So how to navigate the night sky. I have 2 schools that piloted this, Holland Elementary, and if anyone knows Andrea Mangold, she thought this was the best gift to her ever. She loves this unit. The kids are completely engaged. And then Kim Vile and Maureen Welch is also piloting it this year. She said, this is the best kit I ever had. My students are 100% engaged. It's aligned to other content areas. Social studies, I believe, with navigation, explorers, and they talk about daylight savings time and the history along that as well. Oh, so Finestone's also piloting this one too. So that's 3 schools for this. The next one in 5th grade is a topic we already have, ecosystems. So fortunately, this is already aligned. Again, our ecosystems kit is from 2002. So it doesn't come with anything that's modern. So it shouldn't be a huge transition for our 5th grade teachers. And it has all other things that I mentioned before, and I forgot to say, all of our kids come with 2 or 3 days of professional development. And Mixtures and Solutions is also in 5th grade. This is a 2-year pilot. Just because of budgets, we didn't buy it last year, but I believe, let me see how many, I have 4 schools over the past 2 years who have piloted this. We already have a Mixtures and Solution kit. This is just a new edition of what we already have. I think it's like the 3rd edition. So 2002 was the first, and in between there were a couple others, and this is the upgraded one. It's aligned to the standards we should be moving towards. Does anybody have any questions with elementary before I do the high school book? Since
Mr.
it might be
Hidalgo?
similar?
Just a real quick question.
Sure.
So when you're moving from the 6th grade to the 5th grade with the kit, for instance, let's say, I think it was was it the stars? The navigation, the sky to navigate? No? Yeah. So you're moving the kit from 6th to 5th grade.
Well, there is a kit in 6th grade called Earth, Moon, and Sun. We are evaluating what we should do in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to make that aligned. We left 6th grade alone because of what was going on in math this year. So there is another kit on space. It's more solar system related, not as much history and navigation as the 5th grade kit. So we might not choose that kit to keep that Earth, Moon, and Sun in 6th grade. We might and we might not. It's kind of too close to 5th in my opinion, but the way it's vertically aligned, 6th grade and 5th grade are on the 8th grade PSSA, and they're different topics. One's more about navigating and the other's more about planning.
I appreciate that. So, but what I was wondering is, if kids who are moving from 5th to 6th, when that switches, they won't miss out on anything. Since they're not going to get the 6th grade kit because it's moving to 5th, and they'll be moving up to 6th, are they missing something? Just for the 1 year?
This fall, we will still be doing Earth, Moon, and Sun, unless we have a pilot team of a few teachers at a couple schools.
Okay.
So that's usually what happens.
No other question, thanks.
Sure. Any others for elementary?
Just a quick question. Renee, thank you, as always. It's great to talk about science, coupled with STEAM and baccalaureate science, and the kids are excited. Are we up to speed now in terms of, if we were to buy these, are we up to speed in this decade with our science kids?
Well,
because we did some in 2020, correct?
We've been doing 1 or 2 kits almost every year. Because of other district initiatives, I was never allowed to buy a big bulk.
You said it.
So this was my year to roll out an upgrade in elementary science. I will come back to you next year if you let me. I still have about 8 to 10 kits that need to be upgraded. Now, kits are pretty much based on a marking period. So it's not a full sweep of a whole program, K to 5th or 6th grade. When we buy a kit, this kit should probably be about 6 weeks or so.
Okay. And does this overlap? Could this go in as part of the STEAM curriculum when that gets developed?
Some STEM challenges might be able to be moved over. Some what we're working on now is trying to pick out. There's more than one STEM challenge in all the kits, and we might be moving some of those into humanities. So kids might have a little bit more time.
Several areas. These could do that. You can go to different areas. We're just going to stay in science, completely in
Well,
science.
the kid's going to think, they have to know the content in science before they do the challenge. And each kid comes with multiple challenges that a regular classroom teacher won't be able to get to everything.
So by the end of next year, our kids will be in this decade of pretty close.
Most of them.
It won't be some.
No. And next generation science standards tells this, when Pennsylvania adopts it, which everyone's saying it will be in July, we have 3 years to get up to par. So I'm kind of happy, even though they're old, I'm happy that it's happening now, so they are aligned.
Yeah. So I would highly suggest, we're in full budget mode, every penny counts.
No.
And everything that we talk about, one of the concerns at all levels, knowing where our budget is could be. I highly suggest, once we land this budget, and I'm sure you'll get direction from the superintendent, that we start thinking about short-term, long-term ideas and relative to the curriculum and STEAM and everything like that, because planning months out is a lot better than coming and hoping.
I agree.
So whatever we can do, please get it to us as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, one more for high school.
Basic question.
Yes, sorry.
A kit is for a class, a kit is for a student,
A kid is for
teacher.
a class. A kid is for a class, and we did get some pilot kits comped. So you might see on the slide, I need 34 kids or 30 kids or 32. It depends on our estimated sections and how many were comped for the pilot.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. And the last book, high school, can't leave high school out. This is for accelerated physical science. It's called Inspire Physical Science. North and South physical science teachers, accelerated physical science teachers, both piloted this book. It comes with a 7-year online license. What's great is this book currently that we use is from 2005. There is no online math tutorials. It's not connected to Common Core for Math or ELA. There are no STEM challenges. I did write down some things that we were looking for in a new kit, in a new book. Sorry, change gears. This book, our current book, does not talk about LED. It doesn't talk about energy-saving appliances. It doesn't talk about the 9 new elements that were discovered since 2005. It has a lot of outdated content. Doesn't talk about tidal energy or hydrogen fuel cells. So besides being campus integrated, having math tutorials and ELA Common Core standards connected to it, PhET simulations, this was the best product out there that we found.
Yes, Dr. Thorburn.
Who's publisher, author of this? I can't see it.
The publisher's McGraw-Hill. Sorry, I can't see it.
Mrs. Polly, you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize how important it is to get up to speed. I believe there are more like periods or like classes that they have like outdated kits or books. I mean, what you described there is perfect. And it's a hybrid between the science and the other disciplines in STEM or STEAM, I don't know this behavior. And I would urge that we need to get more to that point faster, like everywhere, so we can provide like the best education also.
Yes, Mr. Hidalgo?
So I looked at the price, I said, oh, that's the price of a college textbook, at least when I was, probably double now. But still, when you open it up and you look at it, you see how all the information is jam-packed in such concise and fine, small units that it's great, just from looking at it, it looks like it's...
Thank you. Another thing I forgot to mention is academic book is also McGraw-Hill, and oftentimes some kids aren't placed correctly the first couple weeks of school, so they would be familiar with both platforms. The academic book has the same platform as this one.
Good. Great. Nothing else, right? Okay. Ms. Devlin, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Up next, we have social studies.
Good evening, everyone. Our proposal for social studies text is for the 11th and 12th grade AP World course. This is actually just a new addition to the already existing text. The College Board has gone through some changes over the last few years with the AP World course has actually changed it to AP Modern World. So the time frame through which the College Board focuses their exam has changed over the years. So this text would update that for our students. Speaking to the AP teachers, it's much needed. The last textbook is copyright 2011. So there have been many changes since then in terms of the College Board. There will also be an online component, certainly in terms of learning loss over the past couple of years. The online platform is going to be very useful. The Launchpad will connect with Canvas very easily, and the teachers have said it's going to be really helpful for students who might be out of school for long periods of time and helping them catch up. So these texts will be going both to North and South. The text also does provide critical skills in primary source reading, being able to comprehend certain texts as well. It's more than needed in terms of the changes to the college. And as I said, it's just an updated edition from what already exists in the AP World course.
Good. Yes, Dr. Thornburg.
Just one comment, not question. The unique thing about history is it keeps getting longer. And it's nice, I mean, you said, I think the College Board has shrunk.
Right.
Or at least smoothed out some of the the higher points on this, so. This is not a surprising book, just for that reason.
Right, so it's, right now, the AP World starts at the year 1200 to present day, whereas prior they started at year 0. So, as you said, we got to pick up the changes, right?
Yeah, good, looks good. Anything else? Yes?
Again, I think the same sort of thing. Did you have other publishers that you evaluated? How did we arrive at this one?
Yeah, Bedford Freeman Worth, from what, now again, this is my first year, but from everything that I have heard and spoken to Dean Hentz about, as well as the AP teachers, that BFW does the best job with the AP level texts. Our AP psychology book is BFW as well. The salesperson is great, very flexible in terms of providing resources for the teachers this year to just check it out. So that's really the main reason why we went with that.
There's been, I think, I know that as a school board and as a school, we have no control over what AP stuff does, but there's been national stories, perhaps rumors, perhaps true, I don't know, about a level of bias that sometimes comes in. And I realize that we really can't do anything about that, but that's where another element that, have we gone through this to see how much of that there is and how to instruct to ensure that perhaps, we don't inject politics into our school. Right. Or is there something else that's comparable that we could utilize if we can't get around it?
Yeah, HMH is another publisher that we look to as well, because they do provide AP sources, and they are very similar. The one thing that this text does a good job of, but again, it's because of what the College Board has done, is they've made the study of world history more thematic. So there may be fewer units, but those units should connect to all time periods. So in making it more thematic, you're going to get less into the details in terms of what might be considered a mistruth or a fact in fiction, to the idea of themes that are common throughout time periods and throughout certain parts of the world. So.
And if I may, Mike, they're familiar with this book and this publisher, and it really as well. And based on the scores, we're probably doing something right. So. No, I hear you. Yeah. So, but I can see why you stuck with the same publisher for just that reason.
So this looks good? Good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Up next, we have educational technology and our photography course.
Hello, everyone. I'm trying to be brief. Tech Ed is a little bit different than other departments. We tend to use our texts as resource tools, the way we might use a machine or a tool. We don't use it every day. We don't send them home to kids. They don't go into backpacks. We've managed to survive for the past 22 years on the same basic text that I had in college, an updated version. But our main thing with photography and technology is it does change somewhat. We've been able to update our units and our lessons to keep up. But we'd like to have a new text that would incorporate modern photography, which is, I don't want to say totally digital, but predominantly digital now. Some of the techniques as far as light management and composition are always going to be the same. But it's time that we move away from a book that the kids kind of laugh at because it is rather outdated. Plus, we can access the format of the digital material in the new text to supplement what we've written ourselves over the years. So we're asking for basically a classroom set for each building. Typically, our books stay with the computer station or they're on a bookshelf in the class to be utilized frequently, but not every day. That's why we went with a paperback edition. We do have the ability to bind books in our department too, should that become a problem. We figure we'll probably clear cover all of them when we get them. I'd like to say that probably there aren't too many 22-year-old textbooks in the district that are in this good a condition. So we're not really worried about the paperback aspect that much. As far as availability, this was the only publisher that we found. We piloted this in Dave Deal's class at North over the past 2 years. We started this process during COVID, or at the beginning of COVID, and it didn't quite get off the ground. So it's been in the classroom a little bit since then. He's had no problems with it. We surveyed 3 books that I know of that we got copies of. We discussed others, came down to those 3s. We picked this one. We feel it suits all of our needs and our student needs adequately. Any questions?
Seeing nothing. Looks like we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Next up, we have world language, Spanish 2 and Spanish 2 honors.
Muy buenas noches. Me llamo Lady Young y voy a presentar mi libro, and everybody that will study from this book will be able to understand that. If I came in on the first day of school saying that. This is the second book in a series of 3. So last year we were approved to go Senderos 1, 2, and 3, and so this is level 2 that I'm presenting to you this evening. We did pilot these books. The publisher that we use is Vista Higher Learning. They are outstanding. We use them in French 1, 2, 3, 4, and AP. We use them in Spanish level 4 honors and AP. I teach out of this series myself, and now we are finally bringing them into Spanish 1, 2, and 3. So we had a great year with it this year, especially when kids were online at times with various issues that they were able to use Senderos. The online components of this, which we get for 6 years, are outstanding. They are attractive, colorful. There are videos, there are short videos, there are grammar lessons, there are fill-in-the-blank activities, and then the teachers can take what's in the book and bring it alive in the classroom. I really, really like the little videos that they have in here. This book series covers a variety of Spanish-speaking cultures. They move around the world within the first 3 years. Then the kids move into level 4, where we really, really hone in their proficiency skills, and then hopefully they enter my class in AP, where we get to pull all of this and then really be proficient and perform well on the exam. So we are asking for 300 for Council Rock South, 300 for Council Rock North, $189.95 for the list price. We do get free teacher resources, as well as they're outstanding as if they make any kind of updates. We never pay for an update. They'll plug in a different cortometraje, short film after a few years. They'll say, oh, you've seen this, so we're going to plug this one in. We're like, oh, great, something new. We get the old one, we get the new one. They give us, if we ever don't have enough one year, they'll give them to us for free. They're very, very good because they're good customers, and I actually lived here. This is from Antigua, Guatemala, so it's very current. It's a very popular place for backpackers and lots of Spanish schools. I spent 2 years here. This is called Avenida del Arco. That's also something that attracted me to this series. But we've piloted, we've worked in it. The online resources are excellent. The teachers love it. It's really good for our kids, and it talks about culture, which is essential to know when they take their AP test, because the AP test that we offer at Council Rock is AP language and culture. So you have to be proficient in using the language, speaking, listening, reading, writing, and then you have to be able to also incorporate cultural pieces from your culture, or your community, however you want to name that, as well as the, in this case, the Spanish-speaking community. Any questions? Good.
A lot of books. We have that many sections.
Well, this is what I looked at when I put in the thing. So we will. I have it printed out.
I believe you. It's just astounding that
it's very popular. And we use these for level 2 honors and Spanish level 2 academic as well. All 3 levels. We've already actually met in this room in April with Spanish 1 teachers and Spanish 2 teachers. What do we need? What do we have to work on? And we already have developed the curriculum, so to speak, for the upcoming year.
I
And
knew
we'll
it
do
was
that again.
popular, I didn't know it was that popular.
Yes, yes, and it's super, super popular.
Mr. Roosevelt?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So the online subscriptions are 600, or they'll be flexible. Obviously, you might not get to 600. The digital resources is kind of like an online subscription? It's
Yes,
not
yes, they'll
amazing?
get an e-text, they get an online book as well, and then all of the resources, they can do practice quizzes, they can do real quizzes, teachers get assessments, you can throw in your own questions from a word bank. They have a chance to record their voices, which is excellent, especially as they move up. So as a teacher, we used to have a one-on-one meeting with the kids when we did and it caused so much stress for the kids. We'd meet them out in the hallway, we'd sit, and then the kids inside had another activity, but now it's like, okay, everybody, you have 3 prompts, pick one and record your voice, and you have a minute. And then, especially this year, sometimes we said, and then you have another chance, because they get nervous the first time, and it's really good practice for AP, because there are 2 speaking components on the AP test, which again, it's a simulated dialogue, and then there's something called a cultural comparison. They're timed, they have to speak, they have to be conversational, they have to throw in cultural bits when they can. So this series, we think, is really good for our kids.
So the digital resource is also for number 1, the level 1?
Yes.
And
all
I'm
the
sure
way
it's
up.
being used. I would tell you I'd be knocking it out with the digital resources, because that's a big help than just having a textbook.
Yes, it is.
That's a good value.
It's great too if you, as a teacher, if you're differentiating your instruction a bit, you want to work with this group of kids over here. This group of kids already got the concept. You can say, okay, I'm going to put on real quick. Why don't you do the reading on this, or watch the video and answer this? So it's good because there's a variety of levels, and then you can work with your kids and their individual needs in small groups.
Thank you.
Great.
I think anytime language comes up, and I heard a lot of some buzzwords or specific features of this, you got to sort of compare it and or contrast it to some online popular apps and or sources to quote learn a language. So not that I'm suggesting that we use those, but I'd just like to hear how this compares and contrasts with some of those that are probably geared more toward adults that have already gotten through school, maybe going on a trip, and they want to, quote, learn a language on the flight. That's sort of an idea that's supposed to also get conversational. So I'd just like to hear your opinion of some of those without going into specific detail, but also understand how this maybe approaches that learning style and if there's any merit to what they claim.
I get this question a lot, and it's usually from friends.
Yeah.
They say, oh, you're a Spanish teacher. Oh, I really don't remember anything I learned. What do you think of Babel? What do you think of Rosetta Stone? All that stuff. So they are good to tune your ear. If you want a refresher, you want to hear the accents, you want to hear the vocabulary and pronunciation, and you want to memorize a few phrases. You know, ¿Cómo estás? Estoy bien. Okay, how are you? I'm fine. Okay. However, and this is where our students struggle. They'll say, oh, so I said, oh, we're going to the Dominican Republic. Oh, great, you're going to teach Spanish. And they say, well, yeah, I'm going to ask a question. Everyone starts speaking so fast. And then I stopped. And I said, we have to get used to that. And I think we've all experienced that. If we've studied a language and then we go traveling and then we get intimidated, so we do try to get them over those humps. But to your point, there's nothing better than speaking and having immediate teacher feedback. And I think that's where those miss the mark. If you want to review, or if you want a certain core of vocabulary, if you are going to, where I live, Antigua, Guatemala, Doctors Without Borders would come down and they would take a specific Spanish course down there because it was they could volunteer in the hospitals as well as they could learn specific vocabulary that pertained to medicine. And that was great. But and they'll have programs like that: Spanish for business, Spanish for medicine, Spanish for sports. However, they're not going to get the immediate feedback that I can give when I listen to somebody and they mispronounce a word. And I can either give voice feedback or I can type it in. And so say, you mispronounced this, or you need to say this, or you forgot this, you forgot your adjective doesn't match. And then the student, it's still fresh in their mind the next day after I grade it, and they go, oh. And then the next day, and then we have it documented, so I said, you did it again. Or you mastered it, and so that's what we go for. So I'm not saying they don't work. I've listened to several of them, but I don't think they're going to give the proficiency level that we are trying to gear our students for, or the comfort or the confidence when they want to go out and take their language to the world, and that they want to be confident in what they're speaking. And since we nitpick them to death in a nice way, then they're confident. So I tell my AP kids, I'm nitpicking, but you're going to be fine. Okay, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anything else on the topic of textbook and resource adoption? Yeah.
And I forgot to mention in the beginning, all of our resources and textbooks are on the slide.
Great.
Thank you guys so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, guys.
Hasta la vista.
Hasta luego. Adios.
So, on to topic number 2.
On to topic number 2. We're going to talk tonight about elementary enrollment and problem solving. You're going to see a bunch of charts and numbers, and we're going to talk through each of them. We've spoken many times about some of our challenges, particularly at our elementary school with regard to capacity, and we know that we have issue at Wrightstown Elementary particularly, as well as Holland Elementary. We've discussed with and brought to the board some options. I'm not suggesting any of these are good options. I'm just suggesting that they're options. We've talked about spot redistricting, being flexible with our class size guidelines, relocating grades and programs, and we had a suggestion from a community member about those folks who are displaced at this time from one school to another, allowing them to stay there. So each of these things come with challenges and anticipated costs. So if we were to redistrict a portion of the district, of course, we're going to make a group of people unhappy and kids unhappy with that. There would be an associated cost to the district as far as transportation is concerned. If we did flex our class size guidelines, we have the practice of many times including an instructional assistant into that room. There are associated costs with that. We have had the experience previously with moving 2 grade levels from Wrightstown to Newtown for several years, and that disrupts families as well as it would incur transportation costs. And you'll see a slide on here that talks about students who are displaced from their home school. And what that means is once we get to a maximum capacity in a class, for example, grade 1, the max class size is 25 students. If we close enrollment after June 1st and we have the 26 student move in, they would go to a sister school for first grade and then return to their home school for second grade. We have several students in that domain this year. You heard me mention class size guidelines, and there is a slide that shows you and our community what they are, starting kindergarten through second grade at 25, 26 students in grade 3, 28 in grade 4, and then 30 in grades 5 and 6. And to understand what this means in terms of how many sections we have in each school, it's predicated on the number of students we have enrolled in that particular grade level as of June 1st. So we have a little more than a few days until our enrollment for this year closes. So just by example, if we pick any school, any elementary school you'd like, and if we had 100 students enrolled by June 1st, we take that total number of students, we divide by 25 because that's our guideline, and we would have 4 sections. Once we go over that 25, or once we go over that number, we would then break to a 5th section. And that's why it's important for us to have an end date of June 1st so we know how to go about our staffing for the upcoming school year. Currently, as we look across our 10 elementary schools, may I go back to this slide for a moment? There has been some comments that have been made in the community that have been brought to my attention about, I'm going to use air quotes, counting students. And I want to be careful when we use that word counting students, because we're talking about kids, and they're not a number. We're not counting students, and we want to make sure we have the right place for each and every student to go. And we do have district special education classes. You heard me say a few minutes ago that at Holland Elementary School is a good example of where we have a capacity issue. We have multiple district special ed classes in that building. And we have multiple special ed district classes at Goodnow and the like. And when a student is in a district special ed class, we want to, the best we can and to the best of the students' ability, to incorporate them and include them in our regular, typical classroom setting. So oftentimes, students from a class like an emotional support or an autistic support class will push into a regular ed classroom for part of morning meeting. We have some students that can do more than that. They may push in for part of or all of morning meeting and then an art special. And we have some students that can push in for part of morning meeting or all of morning meeting, an art special, a phys ed special, and science and social studies. And when we have students like that, they are in this example I gave you, they're in that number 100 or 103. If a student can only push in because of their, for us to meet their needs for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes of morning meeting, we want to make sure that they're taken care of and they have that district special ed class to go to. So I know that people have shared Facebook posts with me and people have used that word counting students. And I want to make sure we're not minimizing any of our students by just thinking that they're a number, because they're not. We want to make sure that we have the right place for our kids to go so that we can meet their needs to the best of our ability. As of right now, and across 10 of our elementary schools, you will see the current number of sections in each school, and then that will be totaled on the right-hand column at the bottom. And as you also know, we have a rolling enrollment, an open enrollment until June 1st. As of pulling this data on May 12th, you will see that if you look in the bottom right on this slide, there are 225 sections at our elementary schools. If you look on this slide, there are 206. That's of May 12th. Now, you may say that's a differential of 19, meaning we need 19 less teachers and there will be 19 less students. And I can tell you that that 206 to 225 will close rapidly. We pulled this data on May 12th, and each day, parents are finishing and completing their registration, and they're going into to our numbers. So if we pull this data tomorrow and the next day and the next day, you'll see these numbers change. We do not anticipate, based on our work as well as what we learned from the Cropper report, that we will have such a variance from the 206 to the 225 when it comes time to start school in the fall. On a previous slide, we talked about students who are displaced. So again, if a family moves into the district after June 1st, and let's pretend they come on October 13th, they have a fourth grader and a second grader, and they're supposed to go to any elementary school, and fourth grade is capped. That fourth grader goes to a sister school, a school that's close by in proximity, that has room in fourth grade, and their sibling in second grade would also go to that school for 1 year. They would then return to their home school the following year. So in some of the short-term options that I presented a few moments ago, we said, well, what if we allowed these displaced students to stay at the school where they are assigned now? And that would not make a significant difference in our enrollment at any of our schools, particularly where we have crowding issues. So you could see up there, across the board, we have 9 students in that category right now across the district. Again, we know that June 1st is the deadline. We have approximately 90 families, 90 students in our queue whose families have started the registration process but have not completed that. The 2 grade levels, it's most difficult for us to forecast are grades K and 1. Oftentimes, parents will have their child in a private kindergarten program, and not until June 1st do we know of that for the upcoming year that they're enrolling them in first grade. Giving this information along with the June 1st deadline, we may be coming back to you for the June 16th board meeting to ask you to take action on some of the recommendations as it relates to some of the short-term options that were presented on the previous slide. So I said that in our registration department, we have about 90 students in the queue. It's really about 103 students in the queue because 13 of those students, there's just incongruent information. The address doesn't match a Council Rock address. There's no contact information. So we just kind of filtered those 13 students off and focused on the 90 that have started the process, and we expect will complete the registration process by June 1st. And by school and grade level, you can see up there where we have students in our queue where we're anticipating them being fully registered and part of that particular school's enrollment for the 22-23 school year. Again, these numbers are rolling and it's changing. You should expect that this number will drop the closer we get to June 1st, and our enrollment numbers here will increase the closer we get to June 1st. We also, in the queue, we have some middle schoolers and high schoolers as well. Right now, you can see we have 4 total students in our queue waiting to completely and fully register between now and June 1st, and our high school, we have a total of 5. That does not mean we're not going to get kids moving into our district after June 1st, but they will be the numbers that we have to work with, particularly in our HR department for staffing and in our building level with the principals to determine how many sections of each particular grade level will be in that building for the upcoming year. In terms of long-term planning, and time is not our friend right now for any of these long-term plans, but these are things that we should be thinking about, looking into more deeply. Going back, we know we have a commitment with Cropper for 3 years, but to look at Cropper's report with the October enrollment, it doesn't solve any of our problems, but it does give us a look into the future, into the projections with our enrollment. And then, of course, we know that there's work to be done at Richboro Elementary School, and you are all now considering the base project or the base project plus 5 or 10 classrooms. I do want to point out that when we redistricted, it was the will of the board that we balanced the north and the south side of the district the best we could in that work. And Richboro Middle School currently falls on the south side of the district. And if we put 5 or 10 classrooms, we could be trading the challenge from the elementary school or just moving the challenge from the elementary school to the middle school. So we're going to have to look in at these things closely in terms of what this looks like for our regular ed population as well as our district special ed population that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Some considerations that we can and have not yet, but we can look into would be to have a different grade level configuration Some districts have, K centers or K2 schools, and some have sixth grade centers, and that would require a full look at the district and the reconfiguration of all of our grade levels and where they live. Also, another look would be redistricting. I know we made a commitment not to redistrict within 5 years of the last time we redistricted, but that is something we should be looking at moving into the future. And then we have had experience some years ago with some of our schools where the sixth grade class at a particular elementary school, some families and addresses and students went to the north side of the district. Some families and addresses and students went to the south side of the district. There was parent choice in that, as I'm looking at Ms. McKee, if I remember correctly, we had some parent choice in that. And families were able to pick, based at that school, if they wanted to go on the north feeder pattern or the south side.
And sorry to interrupt, Dr. Senko, I would just also add to that, we've discussed this, while it was done in the past, at that time there were 3 schools also.
Correct.
And now we have 2, so that's
Correct.
a big difference.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're absolutely right. And then I know I mentioned district special ed classes. We are very careful and cautious when we talk about moving any of our students. But when we're talking about some of our most needy kids, we have to exercise caution even more so. But if the decision is made to put 10 rooms at Richboro Elementary, and we wanted to someday move the elementary district special ed classes, there are some of them, that's not a solution that we can capitalize on next year. But they are some considerations for us as we move forward with looking at our enrollment and our projections as we get close to that June 1st deadline.
Let's open it up. Yes, Mrs. Polly.
I have a couple of questions. So the class size, is it the board that determines that? Because there's a guideline there that you have, like first grade 25 and so on. Who determines that class size?
If I recall correctly, it's an agreement between the board and the association for recommended class sizes.
The association of teachers?
The Teachers Association, yes, CREA.
Okay. So the special ed students, I guess you don't count them all in the class size? Or because you said some students only go in the morning meeting, some students may go to like one activity or 2. How do you determine the number of students in the class based on this?
So if I could go back to this slide. If we use that grade 2 as an example, and we look at that number 100, that 100 would include all students who may have an IEP, that is a learning support student. They may have a GIP, that's for students who are exceptional. They're included in those numbers. When I'm talking about district special ed classes, I'm talking about an autistic support program, a life skills program, a multiple disabilities program. They're the type of programs. So for example, we have a multiple disabilities program at Newtown Elementary School. Some of those children are in wheelchairs or feeding tubes or anything in between. We want them to socialize. So they will go into the typical regular ed classroom to be part of the socialization, but then they go back to their own regular classroom in their homeroom. So that's why I said earlier, we want to be careful using that word count and how kids are counted. So if somebody has difficulty reading or doing math, they're in that 100 or that 103. If they are some of our most needy kids, they're still having a place to go. They're just not counted in that 25 for that class size guideline.
I think we have to explain that because we got some emails from parents where I think they misunderstood how we count the 25 per classroom.
Yeah, so for example, again, to this grade 2 example, so each classroom, we have 4, if you use that example, we have 4 classrooms in grade 2 of 25 students. If you're at Newtown Elementary School and we have 4 students in the MDS classroom, one may go in each of the 4 second grade classrooms for morning meeting or part of morning meeting, but go back to their own classroom. When a student who is in a district special ed classroom, for example, an intensive learning support classroom like we have at Holland Elementary, some of those students have the ability, and it's our charge to meet their needs. They have the ability to go to all morning meeting, science, social studies, specials, and then those kids do get counted in that 100 or 103. It's important to note that we have a conversation at the end of each year, right around this June 1st deadline, with each elementary principal that have the district special ed classes in their building, to have the conversation we're having right here. In fact, Dr. Lambert, Mrs. O'Hara, Mr. McClay from Holland Elementary, and myself just had this very conversation yesterday, specific to that school. And we do that every year. And when we have kids that are in district special ed classes that push into the typical and regular ed classroom for better part of the day, they're in that 102, 103 or 100 number.
And finally, since we're planning for the future and we were considering adding classrooms where we can, I think we need to start talking about the possibility of full-day kindergarten. I know it's not going to happen like overnight, but that's definitely something that a lot of people in our community have been asking for. And it's not fair for single parents, and especially most of the time women, that they don't offer that option. Also, because a lot of the parents send their kids to full-day kindergarten in a private school, in a private setting, because they need to work, so they have to send them to a different school. A lot of these kids end up in private schools and not coming to Council Rock because it's convenient, they like it there, they make friends and so on. So I know a lot of districts in our area, they offer it, they've been offering it for many, many years. So I think it's time for us to start planning for that, in that direction.
Thanks. Yes.
First of all, I just want to thank you for that, your email and how you explained. I don't like using that word count too, because it just has a bad connotation to it, because you can turn that around to say, you don't count. So, and it sounds bad. But like you said, we got bombarded with emails about the questions, and I didn't even know the answer to the question, and I actually called the people on the board to try to get an answer to it, and I didn't respond to anybody because I didn't know how to give them an answer. So at least now these people I can say, look, listen to the meeting and you'll understand exactly what is happening with how we quote unquote count students in a classroom and what they do. And I really wanted to thank you for it for my own sake. One of the things that we talked about, that you've mentioned it now before, and a lot of it we can't do until after June anyway, until you know final numbers, but we do have an issue with a couple elementary schools, even now right now with the number of people in the school related to the size of the school itself. I've been to Wrightstown, I've seen the kids in the closets, or what you want to call them, in the hallways. And I just don't know, I mean, one of the things that I had always been a proponent of, and I always think that the situation would resolve itself if we had the courage to do it, is to give those kids that are in Wrightstown the opportunity to return to Richboro. Richboro has the room, in my opinion. Maybe I'm mistaken that they don't, but I think enough kids would want to return, and many would want to stay and take that pattern from Wrightstown to Newtown to North. But I think you might get enough kids who would want to return or go to the other feeder pattern that could possibly alleviate that problem. But I think sometimes what happens, I think it's Cherry Hill, they have total school choice. When those kids go, they pick, you want to go to Cherry Hill West, you want to go to Cherry Hill East. And somehow every year it works out where those schools are populated and it works. I don't know if that's a good long-term solution, but like I said, I don't know how to deal with the Holland situation, because at Holland, you can't say, well, do you want to go to Churchville, or do you want to go to somewhere else? But particularly for Wrightstown, maybe it could alleviate the problem where, the kids would want to return, and I don't believe the number has to be that many where the problem could be solved or workable. I don't know exactly how many kids would have to move. And I don't know if you would get an overabundance either. You had to think of how you want to phrase it, because you don't want 200 kids to say, oh yeah, I want to come back, and then you have a different kind of, problem, But it's something that could be investigated at least.
So two comments, if I may. The first is, as I said, we just met with regard to Holland Elementary, and we are right now, as of yesterday, we're in good shape for next year at Holland Elementary. We do know we have a couple classes that are on the bubble, because some of these numbers, as I said, they'll close quickly between now and June 1st. But we do know, moving forward, there's space for fourth grade. It looks like fourth grade will go to 3 sections in Holland, with the district special ed classes, and with space for a STEAM special. We can be fine at Holland for next year. I can't predict it today what 2 years out will look like. So the immediate challenge is the Wrightstown one, and I think you're suggesting we can certainly look into, and that will have to include a larger conversation, particularly with transportation, and I don't know if we would be able to do that between now and the start of the year, but it's something we could add to the list for possible solutions, for sure.
And we can sit down and do this over beer at some point, but one of the problems with pushing kids back to Richboro is you just shift the problem to Holland Middle School. Because I was elected to the board, I got to pay for that decision to make 2 identically sized middle schools. And so you just changed the crowding to the middle school.
Oh, no, I understand that. And as I said, I guess it would depend on the numbers. Because I actually had a conversation the other day with someone at the middle schools and said, that there could possibly be some room. Like I said, if you have 100 kids that want to come back, that's a problem. But if it's 30, maybe somehow they can be incorporated to work into that feeder pattern without putting Holland Middle School at risk in one way, shape, or form.
The other consideration is you have a big grade gap, K to 6, and if you get two students at each grade level, you're not decreasing class size necessarily, section size necessarily. So that's a consideration too.
Yeah, Mr. Roosevelt, and then Dr.
I
Crowley.
just want to echo Mr. Hickey's compliment about you addressing how you arrive at number of kids per section and per class, and address that issue that the community was up in arms about. And I'm hoping that many of them are online watching and listening to this, but if they're not, it's somewhere that we can point to. I think that's really important, and I really enjoyed the way you did handle that, so I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, and I would say, I hope you understand that now, and the emails that I've received on that, I've tried to call every one of those parents back and explain it the same way to them.
Good. And I imagine that that's helped them quell their concerns. Regarding what we were just kind of talking about also, with the 5 to 10 classrooms in Richboro, Holland Middle School is also effectively at capacity. So moving a problem, whether it's more to the south or whether it's more elementary and shifting it to middle school, we run into that same issue of overloading Holland Middle. The idea of school choice is interesting, perhaps, and I don't want to speak out of turn here because I know it's not entirely a topic, but perhaps maybe that's where some school choice occurs, is at the middle school, to help balance some of that out. But I don't know. We can discuss this at a later
Thanks.
I was thinking, yeah, I just want to guess a comment based on Mrs. Halley's comment. Kindergarten, are we responsible to have a bathroom or anything in those classrooms?
I don't know what code calls for. I do know that for kindergarten, we do need, appropriate sized toilet rooms for them, but I don't know if we have to have them in the classroom or not. I don't know the specs on that.
And then when is the last, I know we did capacity, and that word gets thrown around a lot. And we can go back and forth on what exactly is capacity. Because as we've seen in some of our schools, they're tight,
Right.
but are they at capacity? Are they over capacity? I think, some of our schools, as we looked at capacity during redistricting a couple of years ago, it has changed.
So I think capacity is a nebulous word, and it's predicated on your positionality, where you're seeing it from. So if you look at a classroom, a typical 745 square foot or 845 square foot classroom, you would think you could fit a classroom of 25 students in there. And I would agree with you. In a full-size classroom, we'll have the cubbies. Many of them have the sinks. And you can put 25 little first grade bodies in there, or 25 bigger, or 30 bigger sixth grade bodies in there. But when you talk about the special education classes that I referenced earlier, there are guidelines that we have to follow. So when you talk about an autistic support room, that max capacity is 8 students. So you may still have that 745 square foot classroom where you can think that it's a one-to-one correlation, 1 desk, 1 student, 25 desks, 25 students. But now you change what's happening in that classroom by way of program. It's no longer a first grade class, it's an autistic support class, or an MDS class, or an emotional support class. You have 8 students in there, and there many times those students are accompanied by a teacher and a one-on-one assistant. So capacity is a nebulous word in many regards. I think the best way to understand it is do what I know you all have done, and thank you for doing it, going out to the schools for Teacher Appreciation Week. But you can see firsthand when you walk through the schools, some rooms will have, they'll be the same size. Some rooms will be filled with 25 or 30 students. Some rooms will have 8 students and more adults than the other rooms. And that'll give you a clear picture that it really can't be a one-to-one correlation when we're talking capacity.
And I think the interesting thing at Holland, you were there doing construction. There's 30 classrooms there, multiple classrooms under 800 square feet that are really designed for a district level classroom, if you will. We have champions in the cafeteria, which was displaced years ago. Our math specialists are also jockeying for position around the building. So there's a domino effect there. And I'm not a proponent of just moving kids to move kids. I've said that for years. But the one thing that does concern me a little bit about district classrooms, and you and I have spoken about this at Holland, is that we do have a class there that does feed north. When they graduate from 6th grade, they will be going to Newtown Middle School. So those families are adamant. They love Holland. I respect that. We all do. But that in itself, I would ask if that's good for our kids to keep them in an area where that transition 6th to 7th grade would be great. And I'm not speaking from experience. I'm kind of asking. That was something we kind of looked at a couple of years ago. The parents were really pushing back because they don't want to leave 597 Beverly Road, and I get it. But that school is an interesting school because you don't have traditional size classrooms consistent through that building. So although you may hear 30 classrooms in Holland, they're not all regular ed size classrooms. So that was a battle during redistricting. And when you see Holland filling up, as we've seen, you got to keep that in mind. There's classrooms there. Even if we move a district level classroom, they may be moving out to 550 square foot classroom, which really doesn't help us out. So that's the give and take, and the students first concept. It's got to be about the kids. So
And you're right, the natural feeder pattern for our autistic support program is on the north side of the district, and we have autistic support classes at Holland Elementary. And I'm not suggesting or recommending we move them. I do know that that topic has been discussed before to try to get those kids in the natural feeder program. And I think if we're going to talk about that again, we certainly need to involve Dr. Lambert and the special ed supervisors in that, and then soon after, the families of those kids, because it is a big lift to, you think it's pretty easy to pick up 8 students and the teachers and move to another building, but people are tied to Holland, people are tied to Goodnow, and that's a good thing, that our families are tied and feel good in a school.
Great. Anything else? And Dr. Sanko, are you looking for any direction from the board tonight, or this is just keeping us updated and continuing the conversation?
Continue the conversation, and I think that we, depending on what June 1st brings us, may come back to you on June 16th and say we want some help and give us some direction or make some decisions. The earlier part of the conversation, I'm very appreciative and proud of our curricular folks that were here, giving another night and very detailed presentation. I heard also what, the discussion around the budget, and I know we were going to have a workshop on that, and that's been postponed. And I don't know where you all want to go with the first portion of our discussion, because we still don't have a landing spot for our budget. And I did the math when we were looking at each program, and we're at about north of $620,000. So would look for some direction on that portion of it. And I don't know if that is something, all the curricular stuff, if we could pause until we land on a spot for a budget, or where you want to go with that, I think is probably where I would ask for direction right now. And then the enrollment challenges, we're going to have to continue that conversation.
Do you know if Jason has put any money in the budget for like new books or new kits? I mean, I thought he should have a placeholder for that.
Yeah, he does have placeholders for those, yes.
If we were to say, let's finish the budget with it and just pause, I think there was going to be a push for a vote in June. If we waited until July, does that hurt anything? I don't know.
I don't know what it does with delivery, and I don't know what it does, and maybe Hannah knows, I don't know what it does with delivery, and I don't know what it does with any of the cost. I heard either Julie or Renee say that, if you buy today, you get yesterday's price. That would be something we have to get an answer on. I don't know that.
I'm throwing it out there. I don't know that there's a correct answer, but, I heard budget discussion, you mentioned it too, Dr. Sanko. I mean, maybe that's the way that I think it's in the budget, and I think we're going to land the budget with it, but this way we land the budget, and we approve it, it just sequence. It just sequence, but I don't know. I don't know if that cascades into another problem, so I'm just throwing it out there.
Dr. Sanko?
Yes.
If I may, all of the curriculum items that were presented this evening to the board are currently in the proposed budget that has been presented to the board. So they're already within that budget. To the question of if we wait until July, there could potentially be issues with delivery and receipt of materials in time for the start of the school year, with getting those purchase orders in and getting materials delivered to our schools in a timely manner. So the later that we wait, the more challenging it will be to have the materials that we need to start the school year. I think that was one of the other questions, Dr. Thorwart.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Elliott.
Just to piggyback off of that, we have a gap in the budget that we're trying to address, and we're looking at filling that. So while this may be in the budget, we might not have room for all of it in the budget. So for pausing to evaluate, at least for sometime might make a decent amount of sense.
And the flip side is we have till June 16th, so I mean, we can just forge ahead.
Right, and hearing
And
some,
the
and
last minute.
hearing copyright dates on books from 2002. I'm not willing to wait. I'm not willing to wait.
Yeah, so.
Okay, other conversation questions?
I just a quick question. When you talked about the enrollment, if there's any way as close to June 1st or June 2nd or whatever, that we could get those numbers to at least have an idea of what we're looking at, as we have to make these decisions, or you have to make them, but at least we'll have an understanding of where you're coming from.
We will have them to you by June 2nd, the morning of June 2nd, because we have to know what they are as soon as possible for Christine Taylor for staffing, and we have to have them as soon as we can have them for our building principals to know what sections, how many sections they're going to have. So our registrar, Liz, and our ISDS department will be pushing those numbers right up until midnight of June 1st, and then we'll have them the morning of June 2nd.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Like I said, for me, and I don't know about anybody, for me, this is still a learning process. This is my first time through everything. So I'm just trying to learn as much as I can and hopefully have as much time to study things before decisions are made. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
Mr. Hidalgo, then Mrs. Polly.
Yeah, so on the 16th, are we going to be presented with a solution for next year? Or is this something where we may go into July before we vote on, if it considers moving students?
I'm hoping we have a short-term solution based on what we learn as our June 1st numbers. Again, I feel confident as of today, after speaking, we know that Wrightstown and Holland Elementary are our two most pressing buildings at the elementary school right now. And I feel good today about Holland Elementary. It's not perfect, but they have a little bit of space that we could be okay for next year. The Wrightstown one is the one that I think is the most challenged, and we'll be able to see right where we are as of that, the close of the June 1st numbers, and have some updates and hopefully at least a temporary solution.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Polly, and then we have Mrs. Marcel would like to weigh in.
So
And Mr. Tate as well.
Thank you, Mr. Tate.
So basically in the schools, I think I got a very good idea of when you're describing the size and for special ed classes versus the, but again, when you get the numbers, the enrollment June 1st, June 2nd, if you need help that, I know you've done it many times, just figuring out how to optimize, the allocation. I'd be very happy to help you. I'm sure many other people on the board too. And also, if you think it would be helpful to visit again and see if you want to suggest like moving classes around or like visiting schools. I mean, Wrightstown, I saw it's a big problem. So I just want to say, I'd be very happy to be involved and help in any way so I can understand better what is happening.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Marcel, and then we'll come to you, Mr. Tate. Or Mr. Tate, if you're ready, and I'll come back to Mrs. Marcel.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Ms. McKee. Dr. Senko, I have a question. I love the way you explained the issues with counting students. Is it fair to say, it's probably a gross oversimplification, but is it fair to say that the way a student gets counted is determined by where he or she spends the majority of her time?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I thought so. I thought the way you explained it was very helpful. So thank you, because some of the emails were troubling, but thank you.
I think, Mr. Tate, if I could just add on there, I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry. I think what's important to recognize here, particularly for our families, is that we want to meet the kids where they are, and we talk about each and every one of them, as I said to you at the end of the year with the building principals. So the discussion for an AS student at Holland Elementary may be different than the discussion for an AS student at Goodnoe Elementary. And based on where they are and where we could best meet their needs, that's how we place them in their most appropriate setting.
That makes great sense. And Ms. Crawford really helped me understand that process. And I think Ms. Pally was with me. I think she probably found it educational too, in terms of determining how long an individual student can spend in a typical classroom and so forth. So it's really good to learn more about it. And I did want to comment. I wanted to thank you for the comment you made about the additional classrooms at Richboro Elementary School, about if we add classrooms there, we could just be moving the enrollment problem from the elementary level to the middle school level. I've been a proponent of taking a real close look at adding classrooms in Richboro while we have the opportunity to do it cost effectively, and we have the space and so forth. But, you know, your comment about moving the problem from the elementary level to the middle school level, I think is real helpful in terms of understanding whether or not we want to add classrooms in Richboro Elementary as we remodel it. And I'll be interested in hearing more from you about that decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Mrs. Marcel, are you on the line? Would you care to jump in?
Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, you're good.
Hello? Oh, good. Okay, great. I think I was somehow like double muted earlier. So I wanted to just make a few comments. The first being in terms of the curriculum discussion, I think it would make, definitely, obviously, we have to wait for the budget process. I know that the current items that were discussed tonight are in the budget already, that is proposed, but we have a lot of, kind of work to do, and we need to talk to Dr. Sanko about those items in the budget overall. So I'm comfortable with either voting on the budget in June and then doing the curriculum vote, or doing the budget vote and then following that with a special meeting if needed, to do the curriculum vote, just to ensure that the items can be ordered before July, but that we also have a chance to make sure that everything is just in the right process, so that we're not ordering items and then realizing that they're not going to be approved through the budget. So in terms of the budget and curriculum, that's where I'm at on that. I defer to Dr. Sanko in terms of timing for him, given the announcement today and, just trying to get all these pieces together. And then in terms of the enrollment discussion, I think in the short term, it seems to me like, obviously we need to wait until June 1st to get a sense of where we're at. But I think it's really helpful to see the numbers as they stand now in terms of Wrightstown and Holland. So thank you for putting those together for the board. During teacher appreciation, Ms. Polly and I had a chance to go to both schools together and to see some of the kind of pain points that we have. And so it's good to see that as of now, Holland might have a little bit of relief, but it doesn't look like Wrightstown necessarily has that. So I think we are going to have to just closely follow that and think about some potential ways to help. Hopefully there are not any additional sections for Wrightstown in the next 10 days, but we will see what happens and kind of cross that bridge when we get to it. I do think that it's worth the board having discussions about the long-term options because, as we discussed, I think Mr. Fallon brought this up the last time we had this discussion that, the problem really goes back to the middle schools being the same size, and the size of our two high schools, and trying to make our elementary schools kind of feed within that that proper way. And so I just, I don't necessarily have any answers for tonight, but I just think it's worth this board, trying to really look at that based on the proper data. We're going to hopefully see a little bit of a decline in the future, the near future. So maybe that will give us some time to figure out our kind of strategies for this, so that we don't seem to always be going back to a problem between elementary and secondary buildings and feeder patterns and things like that. So, so that's all for now, but I just wanted to add that comment in.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcel. Anybody else from the board at this point on this topic? I'm seeing nothing. Okay. I thank all of our community members who are here tonight, and I would invite you to make public comment if you so wish. And in recognition of the late hour, I'm going to ask you to please keep it to 3 minutes. If you wish to address the board strictly on the topics of our 2 agenda items tonight, please let us know who you are and where you're from. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, my name is Philip Schmidt. My children go to Wrightstown Elementary School. I just want to point out from this chart that with 18 sections, that means the music room is in the gym. Right? So if we go to 19, what happens? Right? The art room go to the gym too. I'd like to see it go down to 17, so art as a classroom. I'd like to see it go down to 16, so we have a STEAM room versus we're adding a STEAM program next year. So instead of STEAM in a park, STEAM would be in a classroom. I don't know how we get there. I've emailed a few suggestions, but it really does come down to small numbers, right? I mean, a couple of students popping a section takes us from 18 to 19, so it's not 30 students or 100 students. Honestly, it's 4 students in a critical grade, which one is the difference? Sixth grade, if we come down from 3 sections to 2 sections, it makes a big difference. Those 3 students who are in 5th grade now and were assigned elsewhere, maybe they've made friends and like to stay with their friends through 6th grade and they're in the right north-south feeder pattern, right? If first grade pops up to 3, we're in trouble. So it is small numbers. Even though we fit in terms of students in the building, the number of sections is 1 or 2 too many. And then have a great solution, that's something to make it a little more concrete.
Thank you. Appreciate hearing from you. Anyone else tonight wish to address the board?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Gassner, Holland. I kind of need clarification with how to highlight books and curriculum. I'm seeing that the time of the butterfly has been highlighted for summers now. And in addition, the Giver is highlighting presently at Holland Middle School. I just want to say Restart is also another book that's highlighting right now at Holland Middle School for 7th graders. I have 2 out of my 5 kids that have read Restart. I think it's a fabulous addition. Definitely add it if it's an option. But it's just, I'm just concerned with the butterfly, or in the time of the butterflies, how many students are exposed to a book that the board hasn't approved fully, it's being highlighted, so, and also with the Giver, and especially with the events that happened this year with, Nelson and Jeffrey. I'm not sure if the Giver is an appropriate book, especially for Newtown Middle School. But I just need clarification with how books are highlighted. I think maybe the board needs to see them. The curriculum needs to be seen by the board before they're going into the schools. But that's just my thought. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Smith. I'm from Limehorn. I want to talk a little bit about this episode because my 2nd grader is at Holland Elementary, and he has had above the 25 in his class. And I think it's hard. Last year it was above that, and they were online, and how hard it was for the teacher
to teach that many kids in a classroom. This year, he's above the 25. And again, it's tough. These kids are probably the kids that were affected the worst at COVID. They were in kindergarten when it started. They had a gap year in kindergarten and went home. And then they just haven't had a regular school year. And then they have so many kids in the classroom. So I can say that I am one of the parents who was concerned about the counting of kids. That's because I came to a board meeting when my 6th grader was in kindergarten, and I was basically told the kids don't count. Because I had the same issue. My kindergarten at the time had more kids than was said to be allowed, and that's basically what I was told. That was many years ago. As a former teacher and a former teacher that worked with special ed students, I worked with a student with high functioning autism. I was a certified teacher that was with him, and we would go in the classroom. I had to make him interact with the teacher. So when I was in the classroom with him, yes, I was there, but I wasn't answering his questions. He had to ask the teacher because that was part of him being able to be social and learn how to be with the classroom. So my thing with that is you're bringing in kids, whether it be 5 minutes, whether it be 20 minutes. It's taking time from the teacher, which is essentially taking time from the other kids in the classroom. It affects transition times. It affects, it affects transition times and taking room in the class. And I can say when I volunteered when my 6th grader was in kindergarten at the time we were at Hillcrest, I volunteered, and some of the kids from the special class that was, Down syndrome, they came in the classroom, and the teacher had to work with those students, which is taking time from the other kids, which I think is great. That's not what I'm saying, but to say that, they might only be in there for a few minutes, it's still taking the time, and I think that's what parents are concerned about. For however long, there are more kids that are supposed to be in that classroom, and it is affecting a classroom as a whole.
Thank you. Oops, yes, thank you too. That's enough. Anyone else tonight? All right, I thank you all for attending, and we are adjourned. Welcome back.
It's the child.